Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, you know what a theater nut I am.
Yes, absolutely. My mom just came to New York, which is where I live, and she said, Heidi, I'm going to see plays while I'm here. And I said, really, Mom? When? And she said, every single night.
A woman after my own heart. Yes.
So we're going to talk today, because of the grief and loss world, about out of grief comes art.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that today. And Heidi, will you introduce our guest? Because she's a playwright, and I'm absolutely a crazy play person.
Yes, she is. She's very creative, as you know, Mom. I just had to wrap my arms around her bio because she does so many things. So I probably won't do it justice. But Elizabeth Coplan is our guest today. She is a playwright, an author, a grief speaker, and has a series of plays that are grief dialogues. And she has produced these, and we're going to talk to her about them. In fact, some of them have won awards and prestigious awards. And it is opening up the dialogue about grief and loss and hope and healing. And I love everything that she's doing. So welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you both so very much. I'm super pleased with what is happening at Grief Dialogues. And you said it correctly at the beginning, out of grief comes art. And that's what happened. In fact, my original thought was using theater to start a new conversation, which is what we're doing. But I realized it was bigger than theater. It was truly various art opportunities. So the Grief Dialogues came to be when a short play I wrote, Hospice: A Love Story. I was encouraged to submit it to some contests. My cousin had died and from ovarian cancer. My sister and I had been there to take care of her, and it was just one of several events that we often help facilitate with. But the point was that there was a story here that I felt people could resonate with, but nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to stand and listen to my story. So so I put it in play form. I shared it with theater friends, and they, to every last one, said to me, you ought to submit this to play festivals and contests, because that's where where a lot of these experimental type theater is found. So I did, and I started winning awards.
Yep. Well, let me say that you've really got to go on your site to appreciate what you're talking about, because you have these snippets of plays on there that are fabulous.
Yes.
I mean, it is just incredible. Tell me what that site name is so people can go there.
Okay, yes, it's griefdialogues.com. Dialogues is spelled the British way. So Grief Dialogues, DIALOGUES.com. And actually at the, right now at the header, we are actually producing this show on Wednesday in Las Vegas, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But also we have a trailer. If you click on the play, there is a trailer that starts up. It's right at the beginning of that page. You just have to click on it, and it's about a 2-minute trailer that has a snippet from each of the 6 plays that are currently in the Grief Dialogues, the play original script.
It's so much fun to look at those. I mean, they're just a delight, and you just find yourself in them, don't you, Heidi? You find themselves in those pieces.
Yes, I love them. And you told me about them today, and I went and looked at them, and you gave some stats in one of them, and it was at the end, and it said something like, you gave the amount of people that are impacted by a loss, and how it has such ramifications.
Roughly 15 million a year in our country.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And you also invite people to tell their own story.
We do afterwards. I am not a therapist. I'm not a grief therapist, and my purpose behind each and every show is to have a grief therapist and/or expert who then facilitates a post-production audience discussion. And those discussions alone are just are so filled with heartfelt, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes humorous stories that the audience now feels safe to share. They now want to share. They're in a room full of like people. They're not paying a therapist to share. They're in the room with someone, however, who's encouraging them to speak up. My play started winning awards, and then I was at a Dramatists Guild national conference, and I started floating this idea, like, if we put 6 short plays together that are different scenarios of dying, death, or grief, then we could have, the possibility of reaching a wide audience who've experienced one form of death or another. And my playwright friends loved the idea, and I got tremendous submissions. I got over 180 submissions.
That's amazing.
And I narrowed it down myself to 40, and then I had my advisory council fill out a very objective for art survey about the plays that I had narrowed down, especially as it applies to our mission statement. And from that, we came up with 20 plays.
What's your mission statement?
My mission statement is to erase the stigma around dying, death, and grief, and to use theater or other artistic methods to start to break down that barrier. That it's
I love that. We had a man on our show named Bessel van der Kolk who wrote the book, The Body Keeps Score, and he had a son who was very deeply depressed and did improv, and it saved his life. And I'm just thinking of this dialogue and improv. I mean, it's almost like improv when people talk about the play after.
Exactly. It is totally improv. And I'll have to share with you one of the recordings we did after a show, post-production, because usually the actors also want to participate. So they stay on stage with the grief therapist. And so the grief therapist talks about what he or she feels after seeing the play. And then she asks the actors what roles resonate with them. And then she turns it to the audience. And by then, now the audience has had a little chance to think about it. They're not being put on the spot. And these spontaneous stories just come out all over the place. And I've actually had to cut the post-discussion off, because the runtime of the play is 1 hour and 5 minutes. This one particular time, the post-discussion was 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Right. So incredible. Now, are you taking this all around the United States?
Yes, we are. Actually, I'm just a wee bit scattered today because I am actually getting ready to go to Las Vegas in the morning.
Okay.
We are producing a Las Vegas edition on Wednesday night as part of the healing process. It's the 1-year anniversary of the mass shooting in Las Vegas.
Oh,
And so we took the original script. I had a Las Vegas playwright already in my library of those 20 plays. And his piece was perfect. I put that in, and then I had a call to one of the other playwrights about a play about violent death. So she sent that, and we combined that into the Las Vegas edition.
I love what you're doing, because we started doing our own public access television, interviewing people, just because nobody wants to talk about grief and loss.
No.
They want to talk about the good death.
Yes.
You get a lot of action for the good death.
Mm-hmm.
But for actual death, actually they've died, and what do we do now, and what does it mean? And it's hard to get any traction on that, isn't it, Heidi?
It is, and people want to talk about very quickly how they died, and once they hear the 2 or 3 minute story, they are done.
They are done.
It's like, okay, wait, but we want to talk about more than that, how they lived, how people find hope, how they transform themselves, how, they reinvent themselves, how they have post-traumatic growth, all these other things that are so key.
Right.
And as you know, the world is hungry for it. They want to hear it.
They do. They want to hear it. It's so profound out there. And the thing is that death is natural. It is 100% natural. It is going to happen. I 100% guarantee it. It will happen to you. And unless you're a hermit, it's going to happen to people you love.
Right.
And I love kind of, the good death concept, because it makes people less fearful of dying. At the same time, it doesn't necessarily speak to the person who's grieving.
Absolutely.
Although I will say my experience has been, if someone does have a good death, the relief that imparts to the people who are going to mourn is quite dramatic.
What got you into thinking about grief and loss and death and dying. Did you have early losses?
Uh, not any more or less than anybody else, but what was happening was there did seem to be a period of time where I had lost family members that I loved dearly. One of my closest friends in Los Angeles, husband was killed in a freak accident. And then my in-laws were approaching 90 and they didn't even want to talk about death or anything related to it. And I just realized how uncommon it was for people who were grieving or preparing for their own death to be able to talk about it and really kind of think through things. My friend who lost her husband in a tragic accident, 5 months later, one of her closest friends said to her, "It's been 5 months. You need to get over it. Jim wouldn't want you to be this sad." And that, it just sort of all happened at the same time. Come to griefdialogues.com. We have a whole list of all the various things that are coming up, the events and so forth. We have a show in Las Vegas this Wednesday night, 8 o'clock at the Cockroach Theater. We then are part of Reimagine New York City in the latter part of October. That's all on the website.
Well, thank you so much for being on this.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
To have you on. I love everything you're doing. As I
do too.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we want to thank you for watching this show today. And we always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own. And God bless.